In a previous video, I covered Donald Trump's dangerous and disturbing public address to the nation following the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk. And in a follow-up to that video, I want to talk about the widespread backlash that Trump is rightly receiving for it and why we should expect better. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, before we get into the backlash, I want to remind you of what it is that Donald Trump said. Instead of using his position and his office to try to unite the country and tone down the temperature and the rhetoric on both sides of the aisle, Donald Trump instead chose to say this.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
So basically, that's the entire theme of this 4-minute speech. He's blaming the left and the Democrats and liberals and progressives. Apparently, according to Trump, political violence exists on one side against the other, and that's it. Now, as Bakari Sellers noted, Trump didn't mention the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the storming of the Capitol, pipe bombs left at the DNC, the break-in to kidnap Nancy Pelosi and the brutal attack on Paul Pelosi, the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the shooting of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. So there were many, many omissions in that list. And actually, while I'm talking, it occurs to me that Zeteo, which is run by Mehdi Hassan, put together as well an article on this. We might use this video as an opportunity to explore that. But Trump editorialized the shit out of that speech. He carefully cherry-picked how he responded to it rather than use it as an opportunity to unite the nation. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the reaction to this, okay? Many political media figures reacted strongly and negatively to the address, some pointing the finger back at Trump, while others noted that the killer has yet to be identified. TPM's Josh Marshall called the speech, quote, a disgusting and typical display by this degenerate tyrant, pledging retribution against his political foes based on nothing but his rage and desire for domination. Again, Zeteo founder Mehdi Hassan said, this hypocrite said Biden was running a Nazi Gestapo administration and called Harris a fascist and communist. Indeed. He added, quote, including the organizations that fund it. Let's be clear. Trump and his people cynically and openly plan to use this tragedy and murder to go after Democrats, the left, and their political opponents. And I have no other reason to believe that that's exactly what Trump wants. We have no reason to believe otherwise. Pod Save America host and former Obama staffer John Favreau was slightly more philosophical, noting that when a white supremacist gunned down 9 black parishioners in Charleston while they prayed, a black president reminded the nation that the victims' families stood in the courtroom and offered the killer words of grace and forgiveness. America doesn't have to be this way. And I'm just curious now, they don't have like visual images of it. It looks like there's a code break in the article. CNN's Karen Finney wrote, Trump is parroting what Loomer said earlier today, and it pushes people further into partisan corners rather than taking a stand against political violence in America and makes every one of us less safe. Reporter Benjamin Ryan described Trump's address as one-sided. Trump blames Charlie Kirk's assassination on the radical left and vows sweeping vengeance and retribution. He recounts a litany of recent political violence, but only attacks directed at the right, not, for example, the assassinations of Democratic leaders in Minnesota. And so there are other examples they provide here, and I guess we can look through these real quick because the code broke there. And that's why it looks like they misspelled. That's why they added an extra R into Twitter. So they've got a long list of links here that we can't access because they screwed up the links. But that's okay. You get the gist of it. I've got some others that I want to provide. Again, Bakari Sellers, who is a CNN analyst and a Democratic strategist, he also reminded people of examples of Trump's of right-wing violence against left-wingers that Trump omitted. Aaron Frischner says he basically reads the political violence list from Ezra Klein's post, but erases all the ones with non-conservative victims, and again falsely says he was targeted by leftists, and then says the stuff Josh quoted as the FBI makes clear they have no idea who did this and why. You look at the quotes, you have Joe from Jurors, who posts a video of President Biden's public address following the attempt against Trump, and she says, note the difference. And indeed, we covered that address. President Biden spoke compassionately and graciously and didn't attack the right and didn't attack Republicans and didn't attack Trump. He was just condemned political violence and urged the nation collectively, without pointing fingers, to calm themselves down and walk themselves away from the brink. Again, you can see some other quotes. He's absolutely going way overboard, which is a dead giveaway over a political activist that 90% of Americans have no clue about, who just 2 days ago called for the release of all the Epstein files. And again, this is like conspiracy nonsense, so I reject that. Joe Walsh, former Republican congressman who was actually very close with Charlie Kirk, he was devastated by this. He says, and like always, Trump goes all in ugly partisanship, divisiveness, and hate. Trump uses a political assassination to attack half the country. He quite literally is the divider in chief. He's such a danger to this country. I so worry about where this is heading. Julia Ioffe says there's no suspect in custody. We don't know who did this and why. The president of the United States is already calling for purges. Things are about to get a lot darker. Rusevecki, there's never any expectation for Trump to moderate his rhetoric. He has long used violent speech and has mass pardoned thousands for their attempt to violently overthrow the U.S. government. He has also regularly called for violence against Democrats. Tara Setmeyer, who's a former Republican strategist, says divisive, disgraceful, deplorable, dangerous. Jessica Rydell says, you can always count on Donald Trump to fail to meet the moment. Instead of trying to bring people together and de-escalate all the recent political violence, he decides to throw in partisan cheap shots, of course. And it goes on like this. You see this again. Joe Walsh again says he had an opportunity last night to heal a broken and divided nation. Instead, he attacks, he pours gas on the fire, and he further divides. For the next 3 years, the American people are on their own trying to lower the temperature in this country because the guy in the White House is humanly incapable of it. Ahmed Baba, this is not the message the country needs. We need a unifying leadership to take down the temperature, not exploitative blame-seeking that falsely pins all political violence on one side of the spectrum to fit Trump's narratives. George Conway says that is a very Nazi thing to say, actually. John Favreau, Pod Save America, responding, we read that quote out. So again, I mean, he's getting widespread backlash as well he should. So let's go to Mehdi Hassan's article here. So Donald Trump gave an incendiary televised address in which he railed openly against, quote, radical left-wing political violence. Again, Elon Musk had his own reaction. We'll get into all of that. Such rhetoric from the right is as dishonest as it is dangerous. Here are the facts for those with conveniently short memories. The man who targeted and killed Democratic state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in their home in Minnesota in June was a Trump supporter, targeted and killed. The man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April was a Trump supporter. The man convicted of orchestrating a series of shootings at the homes of four, I need to text Mehdi because it says hootings. I need to text him that so he can edit this. At the homes of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico in 2022 was a Trump supporter. Again, orchestrating a series of shootings at the homes of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico. The man who tried to kidnap then Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and assaulted her husband, Paul, in 2022 was a Trump supporter. The men who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January 6, 2021 were Trump supporters. The man who killed the son of an Obama-appointed district judge, Esther Salas, in 2020 was a Trump supporter. The men who were convicted of trying to kidnap Michigan's Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, in 2020 were Trump supporters. The man who sent pipe bombs to the homes of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and other top Democrats in 2018 was a Trump supporter. The man who killed left-wing activist Heather Heyer after driving his car into a crowd of counter-protesters in Charlottesville, 2017, was a Trump supporter. And the last thing I'll say, because this just came up, is there was a bomb threat that was just called in to the DNC headquarters. Yeah. Now, law enforcement showed up. They determined the bomb threat was not credible, but this happened just, again, a day after Charlie Kirk was brutally assassinated. So we have no idea what will happen from here. But folks, again, I just wanted to point out At the end of the day, again, I've said this in previous videos, it's going to be a recurring theme. In mass movements, it is impossible to perfectly police them, and you will always have crazy fringe elements in right-wing mass movements and left-wing mass movements. What's important and what tells you more about the heart and the character of a movement is what is said, what is articulated, what is expressed by their leaders, by the people with power and in power, okay, by the elected officials and by the major influencers. People like Charlie Kirk, for example, who, again, he was never in elected office, but he was extraordinarily influential over the Republican Party. And what you're seeing at the very top, the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, who therefore has the highest level of responsibility in the world, far more responsibility than any Republican or Democratic lawmaker. When he reacts this way, we are in deep shit. We are in deep shit because there is probably not a single thing or a single person who can single-handedly unite the country, but the person who has the best chance is Donald Trump, the President of the United States, given the influence he has over the Republican Party and his power and position as the president. That's why it's so important that in the aftermath of tragedies, what presidents say and do, be it Donald Trump, President Biden, President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, all the way back to President Washington, the words of the sitting president of the United States, the most powerful and important person in the world, matter. And Donald Trump deliberately chose to weaponize his to make things worse. And he is receiving backlash and pushback as well he should. We should not accept this. It's unacceptable. We should condemn it in the strongest possible terms and demand that our elected representatives, including the president, step up. And to those of you out there who, because you're upset at what happened to Charlie Kirk, I get it. You have every right to be upset, but think here. Do we really want to make this worse? And what would you expect if the shoe were on the other foot? And again, 2 Democratic lawmakers were recently shot, again, in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago by a Trump supporter. Imagine that didn't happen while Trump was president. Imagine Biden were president. And imagine if Biden just wholesale condemned the right and said effectively all political violence comes from the right. How would you react? You'd be pissed, and understandably so. Don't be a hypocrite here. Live your principles. You should condemn this rhetoric from Trump. It matters, and it could make things substantially worse. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.